There was once a man who would stand for hours before a pond full of water lilies, not to fish, but to listen to the light. He devoted his entire life to chasing something the naked eye could never truly grasp, the fleeting moment when light changes everything it touches. People called him the father of Impressionism. But before his name was celebrated, Claude Monet had been laughed at, rejected, even bankrupt. This is his story. Claude Monet was born on November 14, 1840 in Paris, in the midst of a cold winter. When he was just 5 years old, his family moved to Le Havre, a port city in northern France, where sailboats, open skies, and the salty scent of sea winds were etched into his childhood memories. His father, Adolphe, hoped his son would follow in his footsteps in the family's grocery and provisions business, continuing a stable way of life. But in young Claude's eyes, the world was not about numbers or goods. It was about colors, shapes, and light. From an early age, Monet loved to draw what he saw, not in stiff academic lines, but with vibrant, free strokes. He was particularly talented at caricature, humorous portraits that exaggerated a person's features, making anyone who saw them smile. By the age of 15, Monet was already earning money from his skill, selling drawings to classmates, townspeople, and even displaying them in a local shop. But the biggest turning point of his teenage years came when he met Eugène Boudin, a local landscape painter. Boudin saw a rare talent in the boy and decided to take Monet outdoors to paint directly from nature. "You must learn to see how light and color change every minute," Boudin told him. That experience opened a new horizon for Monet. He began to understand that painting was not merely about reproducing shapes, but about capturing a feeling, the vibration of a moment created by light and atmosphere. This principle of painting directly before nature would become the foundation of Monet's style, and later, the very soul of the Impressionist movement. In 1859, at the age of 19, Monet left Le Havre for Paris, the city of light, where every young painter dreamed of going. At the time, Paris was the beating heart of European art, but it was also dominated by the academic art institutions. Painting there meant creating large canvases depicting historical scenes, Greek and Roman mythology, or stately portraits of the aristocracy. Lines had to be precise, colors had to follow strict rules, and everything was painted in the enclosed space of a studio. Monet, with his free spirit and his eye always seeking the tremor of nature, quickly felt alienated from this rigid approach. Instead of being enthralled by plaster statues or classical canvases, he was drawn to everyday scenes, a rainy street corner, the morning sun filtering through leaves, or the evening shadows stretching across a pond. Almost every day, Monet would go to the Luxembourg Gardens, a lush public park in the heart of Paris. He would sit for hours, not just painting, but observing the way light shifted from moment to moment. For Monet, every passing minute was a brand new painting. But his artistic path was far from smooth. In 1861, Monet was conscripted into the army and sent to Algeria, then a French colony. During his time there, he was captivated by the dazzling light of North Africa, the intense colors of its skies and landscapes, impressions that would stay with him for life. But ill health cut his service short. Just a year later, suffering from hepatitis, Monet was forced to return to France. Back in Paris, reality hit hard. His family did not fully support his artistic ambitions, and money was painfully tight. Monet lived frugally, struggling to afford paints and canvases. Yet despite the hardships, he refused to abandon his brush. For Monet, painting was not just a profession, it was his reason to live. By the 1870s, Monet had found like-minded friends, Pierre-Auguste Renoir, Alfred Sisley, and Camille Pissarro. They were all weary of the dry, academic style of the official salons. The group made a bold decision. Instead of locking themselves in dark studios, they would take their easels outdoors, facing nature directly, to capture the fleeting shifts of light. For them, a ray of sunlight breaking through clouds, a breeze stirring the leaves, or a shadow gliding over the water were all worthy subjects. They painted wheat fields swaying in the wind, rooftops bathed in sunlight, boats drifting gently along the Seine. Each painting was not just a scene, but a breath of that exact moment. In 1874, The group organized an independent exhibition at the studio of photographer Nadar, a risky move as they rejected the patronage of the Paris Salon, the very institution that could make or break an artist's career. At this exhibition, Monet presented Impression Sunrise, a view of sunrise over the harbor of Le Havre, his hometown. A critic named Louis Leroy mocked the painting, dismissing it as nothing more than an impression rather than a finished work. The word impression, he used sarcastically, became the official name of the Impressionist movement. However, the debut was far from triumphant. Most of the public and critics were harsh. The paintings were dismissed as unfinished, sloppy, and not serious. Many people literally turned their backs on Monet's work, but he did not give up. On the contrary, the resistance only drove him to keep exploring the changing nature of light and color, something traditional painting had never truly captured. In the 1860s, Monet met Camille Dancieux, a young woman with gentle eyes and a radiant smile. Camille was not only his life partner, but also his endless muse. She appeared in some of his most famous works, such as Woman in a Green Dress and Camille in the Garden, always surrounded by light, like an ode to the fragile beauty of life. In 1870, Monet and Camille married. They had 2 sons, and their little family lived modest but love-filled days. Monet often took Camille outdoors to paint, capturing moments of her smiling among flowers or sitting quietly by a window. But happiness was short-lived. After a long illness, Camille died in 1879 at the age of 32. The last portrait Monet painted of his wife, Camille, on her deathbed, was not just a depiction but a painful farewell from an artist to his greatest source of inspiration. Such a loss could have destroyed anyone, but for Monet, the brush became his anchor. He painted more than ever, as if each stroke was a way to hold on to Camille's light, to prevent time from erasing those precious memories. Still, life did not ease its grip. Monet was deep in debt, at times facing the loss of his home. His paintings sold slowly, and even his friends could offer only limited help. In one letter, he wrote, "I will die if I cannot paint." This was not an exaggeration. For Monet, art was not a career, but the reason he continued to exist. In 1883, after years of wandering, Monet discovered the place of his dreams, Giverny, a peaceful village along the Seine. It had cobblestone paths, golden wheat fields stretching to the horizon, and sunlight that seemed to filter through the soft veil of time. The moment he arrived, Monet knew this would be his final home. He rented, and later bought, an old house with a large plot of land. With his hands and the vision of an artist, Monet began transforming it into a living masterpiece. Vibrant flower beds, carefully pruned trees, and most famously, a water lily pond that he had dug and filled from a nearby stream. Across it, he built a simple, graceful, Japanese-style wooden bridge. This garden became Monet's own world and his endless outdoor studio. Over more than 20 years, he painted hundreds of water lily canvases. But they were not merely pink petals floating on blue water. To him, each painting was a symphony of light, from the warm gold of sunrise to the deep violet of twilight, or the silver chill of a winter morning mist. Monet did not aim to record the exact shapes of each flower. He sought to capture something more fragile, the feeling of a moment. That's why each of his water lily paintings is different, like endless variations on the same melody. In his later years, cataracts clouded Monet's vision. Colors appeared distorted. The blue sky sometimes turned yellow, and the lilies sank into deep crimson. Yet rather than stop, Monet kept painting. He learned to see with memory and emotion, creating works that seemed to exist in a dreamlike haze, half real, half imagined. It was only in his final years, after decades of steadfast devotion to his path, that Monet gained wide recognition. From being mocked as unfinished and messy, his works came to be seen as masterpieces that captured the very essence of a moment, something no camera could replicate. The pinnacle of this recognition came when Monet's monumental water lily paintings were installed in the Orangerie Museum in Paris. He called it a temple of meditation and light, an oval-shaped space where visitors are surrounded by long, continuous panels, drenched in color and movement of light on water. Stepping inside, one feels transported to Monet's Giverny garden, where time stops and only the whispers of wind and water remain. On December 5, 1926, Monet passed away at Giverny at the age of 86. He left behind more than 500 works spanning his lifetime, each one a fragment of memory, light, color, and the stirring of the soul. Claude Monet didn't just change the way people painted. He changed the way we see the world, not as a frozen photograph, but as an endless flow of light and color, where every moment is unique and unrepeatable.
Monet spent his life chasing something no one could hold, light, but it was that very persistence that left him with an immortal legacy. Perhaps in our own lives, too, what matters is not holding on to everything, but daring to go all the way in our own journey. If you believe in following your passion, leave a comment, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories about people who changed the world.